Hello, welcome everyone to Android Developer Relations office hours once again. First, let me do some intros. Off to my left is Joe Fernandez, Android Developer Relations, and to my right we have Trevor Johns and Alex Lucas. If you're listening to us or looking at us or watching or whatever, please +1 so that we have an idea of how many people are attending. And the only other thing I would say is that please feel free to type in or type in or talk in, put into chat your questions for today. Since we don't have any yet, we'll go to the moderator. And the first one is how to pick the correct phones to release on. I'm working on a very big app, and we need to decide on a release strategy. Which phone should we release on? We're looking at ComScore, and it seems like the distribution in the US is about 1% per device.
All right. Well, to start off, I honestly think you're looking at this a little wrong. You shouldn't be looking at which phone to release on. You should be looking at which platform to release on. And generally, the advice we give for that is Android 2.2, which, if I remember the numbers correctly, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it's 80% of all phones are on Android 2.2 or above. Does that sound right?
It sounds about right.
Yeah.
So if you go back one in Android 2.1, then I think you're in like 90% or above.
Right. So I mean, with Android, we try and make it so that all devices are compatible as long as you stick to our published APIs. So you shouldn't have to go and say which phone do I want to release on. And now, of course, it's good to go and test across a wide variety of phones. There are different form factors, different screen resolutions, and you do need to keep that into account. But you don't launch for one phone. You're going to be launching for all phones that meet your published minimum criteria. And so you really should be looking at what's the baseline level of features I want to support. So Android 2.2, as far as screen resolutions go, you're usually good with a normal size screen running. I'd say you'll want to go and target MDPI, LDPI, MDPI, HDPI, and XHDPI. XHDPI still doesn't have a lot of devices running it, but that's the new hotness. So I usually recommend people go and target that, and then work down from there to the other two resolutions. Just that way you go and get, not only it's easier to go and work down than trying to go in reverse, but it also go and get you on all the new phones as well.
I would also add that it would be important to cover get a small pool of devices and have each one sort of cover a area. So within like 3 or 4 devices, you should be able to cover, like Trevor said, different densities and different platform versions. I would say maybe a 2.x, a 3.x, and a 4.x device. So, Froyo, Honeycomb, and Ice Cream Sandwich.
Right.
Honeycomb means at least one tablet, assuming you do want to support tablet. I know that Netflix wrote a blog post about testing and making sure their app works on a wide variety of devices with only, a very small handful of physical devices. I believe it was. Do you remember what it was titled? It was something like "Stop worrying about fragmentation and just do QA."
Something like that, yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Now, all that too. Netflix is actually, they're one of the more complicated apps you'll see because they're doing video streaming. And video streaming, you have a lot of requirements as far as latency, and you have to make sure that your video is able to go and decompress on the fly. So what Netflix is doing is actually probably a bit more difficult than whatever you're doing, unless you're a high-end 3D games developer. So if they can do it on just a handful of devices, you probably can too.
Yeah.
Okay.
It still makes me curious about what the developers is thinking about it. Say this very big app, and why they think that a device specificity is actually important on this one.
Right.
So,
but
if you're online, maybe
when I hear people say that, we convince them otherwise. It's usually the wrong way to go about
it.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. Not to take away from your answer. I'm just wondering why they think that's interesting. Why that's something.
It would be good to know. And if you are watching live, definitely hop on here and give us some more information.
Great. Thank you, gentlemen. I want to switch to a question that we've received through chat. Jared says, I don't have any new technical questions. I'd like to check the status of the questions I asked last week regarding Renderscript.
I don't remember.
I don't
I
remember.
can take that one.
Yeah.
So the engineer still has your questions starred, so he'll get to them whenever he can. He's just really busy.
And for those of you who are not here in the studio with us, that's Robert, our producer, right off camera.
Thank you, Robert.
Our producer / Renderscript guru.
expert. Yeah.
Because everyone here has more than one job.
Right.
Yeah. So Jared says thanks. Then we have one more in chat. I used an animation to do a slide down animation to a different place on the screen, but when the animation finishes, there's a blink with a layout that moved. How do I avoid the blink?
The layout that moved.
Yeah, I'm not sure what that blink would be. That's a very good question. I mean, it sounds like.
Sounds like you're online. Can you talk to us and tell us a little bit more?
Yes, it's when I did a slide down animation to move a layout to a different place on the screen, and when the layout reaches the endpoint, it blinks and then it stays at the place that I wanted it to stay for some reason.
Yeah, I've never actually run into that myself.
I haven't seen that either. So does it flash white or black, or is it the whole screen?
No,
or just that
it's
one
like
view?
basically it disappears from the screen and then it comes back.
It disappears. I'm not really sure why that would be.
Yeah, I think we need a bit more information. We actually need to see the code that you're writing here. None of us know the answer off the top of our head or have seen similar behavior before. So
if you could post, have you tried it on? Like, what platform are you saying this on?
This was on my Galaxy Nexus.
Okay, so it's on ICS. Have you tried it on any other?
Yes, on a Galaxy S2 running Gingerbread.
Okay, and is the blink consistently happened?
Yes.
Okay. Interesting. Well, Galaxy S2 means that it's not using fragment transactions, right? Because those were added in Honeycomb.
Right.
I'm not sure. I would need to see the code. If you could post the relevant snippets to Stack Overflow and link them from the moderator, then we could look at it a bit later. But this is something I would really need to see code to be able to diagnose.
Well, what I did is basically, in general, I did a animation listener, and at the animation end event, I told it to update the place because, at the end of the animation, if you don't update the place, it goes back to where it was. So that's what I did.
Okay. Yeah. I'm still not sure.
Yeah, we'll still need to get some code.
Okay, so I'll post it on Stack Overflow.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Great. Thank
you. Next question from moderator. I've tried out the Atom KVM-based virtualization of the emulator. Seems to be faster even than an actual phone. I was wondering, though, are there ICS images available, and would they include Google APIs?
So I'll take that one. First of all, I'm glad you're using the virtualization stuff and that you're finding it faster. That's great. That's good feedback to take back to the team. As far as an ICS version, I believe it's in the works. We're not supposed to talk about when things are released. I don't have a time frame. That image is actually being worked on by our partner Intel, so we don't actually have direct control over when that image comes out. So we've provided information to them, and we're still eagerly awaiting that image as well. So just keep an eye out for it. Again, I don't have an actual time frame, but we're expecting it sometime soon. Would it include the Google APIs? I don't believe so. I haven't looked recently at the Gingerbread version that's out there right now. I think it's just a generic AOSP build, so probably not. But again, not sure.
Okay. Thank you, Joe. Someone's typed in, I have an application idea that I wish to share with you guys. All right.
Well, my name's Richard Brown, and what the application idea was that now you have when you have newspapers, and you can access the news on an application, and then purchase. Say for instance, you want one article, but instead of buying the whole paper, you buy the one article for either 1 penny or 1 cent, and then if you do have the choice to buy the full newspaper for the whatever set price that the company sets it at. Therefore, as I felt that the Google News application on the website is really good. However, I think it could be better, and it could be put onto an Android platform.
My comment is, it sounds like a good idea to me. The real issue is going to be getting a source of the news.
Sure.
You know, that's going to be the real issue, is whether you can negotiate with a news provider or more than one news provider to be able to do what you want with what you're talking about.
Yeah,
sure.
Another issue too also, I mean, like at the pricing you mentioned, it's actually very hard to go and do credit card transactions at the sub $1 range.
That's true.
Because at that point, just the cost of the credit card transaction itself starts to dominate over the actual money you're getting from it. So you're not actually necessarily getting anything that in return for that, other than the hassle of having credit cards and possible credit card chargebacks.
That's true. Although, I mean, there's ways of working around that. Certainly, I think that that's going to be one of. There's a bunch of different issues. I still think it's a great idea. I still think people would be interested in it. The real question is going to be whether you can work the details out with a news provider. I mean,
sure.
I'm not really sure how Google does it with Google News, but so I can't really comment about that. But the problem is that if you don't do it the right way, you run afoul of the people that are actually providing the news online, and that can get tricky.
Sure. Well, the other kind of side of it that I was thinking about was it could be like, in essence, an add-on to like Google Plus. So say, for instance, the news company would sign up to Google Plus or Google, and then they could post the stories directly to Google Plus or Google News, as it were, and then they could set the price or whatever, or however they felt.
Right.
And additionally, they could have like now you've got the swiping from left to right gesture to reveal different segments. Well, what I thought was that most of the news companies will get their revenue from advertisements. So you could have a section for advertisements that you could swipe to,
yeah,
as well as other features.
As we said, it's an idea that's definitely worth exploring some. But we do want to move on to some other questions and follow up on some answers that we've got for questions. But thank you for the idea. We certainly appreciate it.
No problem.
Emil wrote in a reply to the animation question. He says, sounds to me like you're using the old animation framework. You want to set fill after to true so that the view doesn't flicker before setting its new location. I think this is your problem. Thank you, Emil. We'll have to see whether that works out or not. This is because the view is not actually moved, only the drawing of it. Okay, well, we'll see if that fixes the original poster's question. A question, yeah, thank you, Robert. A question from Jared. Can you speak to the intended future support for Renderscript? Is it safe to expect it to continue to have support and expansion?
This is sort of two-sided. On the one hand, we can't speak to, in general, we don't speak to roadmaps or what's happening in the future. We have the, non-working time machine there to prove it.
Right.
But in general, we have a philosophy of maintaining backwards compatibility.
Right. Well, when something's actually published and is assigned an API level, apps targeting that API level will always work, or should always work anyway. I'm not aware of any cases where we've broken that yet, and hopefully that will continue. Now, what might happen is going forward, we might decide that some future API level behavior might change. But even if that happens, if your app targets the older API level, you'll always get the same functionality. Hopefully you guys can still hear us. I see a big red dialog on our screen saying we had some server issues, but yeah, I mean, generally speaking, once we publish something, it's out there for good and should always work. So if you're worried about the Renderscript disappearing, I would say don't be worried. It's not going anywhere anytime soon.
Okay. Yeah, it looks like our producer has said that we're okay, so we'll keep on going for the moment. Let's go to another question in moderator. Last week I asked about the white background in custom notifications on ICS, when it should actually be black or translucent. I was told to try moving the SDK up to level 15, but that didn't solve the problem.
I wasn't here last week, so...
I remember this. I
remember too, and I thought move the SDK version up or move the target up would be
right.
the right answer. In terms of other, at this point, all I can really do is speculate, but I would say if you're maybe using a third-party library, or if you have, if you're writing your own custom themes, one of them might have bled over to notifications. I can't really say definitively what it is if setting the target SDK version didn't work, though. You guys have any theories?
So, well, just to get some background here, and then also if there's somebody viewing who wasn't with us last week as well, Simon, is this person just trying to go and display a view that's, some custom notification and it shows up white? Is that the extent of the problem?
Yeah, it's not showing up the way that system notifications usually do. It's just
white text on a white background.
No, I mean, what I'd be mostly worried about there is, what attributes are they applying themselves, right? If it's a custom view that they're using for their notification, it's entirely possible they've set a custom background color or a custom font color.
Right.
And if that's the case, that would perfectly explain what the problem is. And the answer there is don't hard code your font colors or your background color. Use the theme colors, right? You should use the properties defined by whatever the system theme is. Because I mean, this is not just a problem with moving to ICS. It's a problem whenever you move between devices and depending on how the device manufacturers theme the system.
I imagine it has to be something a little bit more subtle than that, though, because if they said, set notification background white, set notification text white, they would know what the problem was.
Yeah, but I mean, sometimes I'm just wondering if some devices might override the font color.
That's true. If it's a if it's a theme somewhere.
Yeah. My usual rule is unless you know exactly what you're doing, never hard code font colors, because there are some devices that use dark fonts and some devices that use light fonts, and set the background appropriately. And there's just so many ways that you can actually get tripped up there. And it's better just to use system colors.
Okay. I do remember this question from last week. The comment I can make is that one of the DevRel people that was here last week, I think it was Roman, recognized that this might be a problem that existed in previous platform versions, and he was the one who suggested to move up to version 15. But it, as Trevor has pointed out, it may be something unrelated to that. So
I would say just to see if it magically fixes everything, to explicitly set your theme to theme hollow, since you're targeting 15 anyway, and or theme hollow dark or theme hollow light, one of the two. And,
well, I mean, it depends on what he's using as his minimum as well too. He might have to go and dynamically switch at runtime.
Right.
Yes, but he can at least try it and see if that fixes the problem.
Yeah. He doesn't even have to necessarily switch at runtime. You can just use the pick different platform versions in the whatever res subfolder.
I consider that switching at runtime. The framework takes care of it, but it's still a runtime switch.
Okay. Yeah, it's just not extra code. It's just copying it.
Right. It's very easy to do. It's just how you name your folders.
Okay. Thank you. I want to come back to chat because we're having this conversation here between Emil and I think it's Sol. Emil said that, well, I'm sorry, Sol, who I think was the original poster about this animation problem, said that fill after was set to true, and Emil said, well, I'm not really sure what I set it to originally. Maybe it needs to be set to false. It fixed a similar problem that Emil was having. But he suggests look into fill after and fill before attributes at least. So I wanted to bring everybody up to date who may not have seen that in the chat. And then let's switch back to another moderator question here. Where can I find an updated document about debugging an app with native and Java code? I can compile and run in Eclipse, but if I put a breakpoint in my native code, my app crashes after about 2 steps. DS-5 Community Edition doesn't find my symbols.
Yeah, so I'll take a swing at this one. That actually is a limitation right now of our current tools of being able to debug into native code. There's not any real good solutions that I know of to solve that kind of problem, because the native code is built to be very low level, and you need to basically do kind of your own separate debugging problems there.
I mean, there is the NDK GDB tool, though, right?
Yeah, I'm not familiar with that one.
Yeah, so we have had some improvements lately as far as debugging native code. I haven't looked at them much myself. I do know this is something we have been trying to improve. I also do know that just looking through the release notes as far for the NDK, there were some issues with crashes while trying to debug with the last couple versions. So maybe the first thing I need to go and try and fix this is make sure you're using the most recent revision of the NDK and see if that solves your problem for you. But Joe's absolutely correct in that debugging native code can be a little tricky, and for that reason we usually try and steer people away from native code when possible. Of course, sometimes you do need to use it, and sometimes it's unavoidable. But when you're using native code, that's the cost.
Right. It's more complex. It's a little bit faster depending on what you're doing. Some of the stuff, depending on what you're working on with native code, maybe you can actually do it in the regular framework API and use the regular framework APIs. If you're having a lot of trouble with developing and using that technique, maybe it's time to take a step back and try a different approach. But thanks for the feedback. We're aware of some of the challenges of debugging native code, and we'll take that feedback back to the team.
Yeah, well, and like I said, we have been trying to improve it. I know the last couple of releases there have been some features in there specifically to go and aid debugging, and we do want to go and continue to try and make it better over time.
Okay, the next question from moderator. How can I programmatically initiate installation of a configured home screen widget from within an activity? I only want to initiate the widget placement process. Obviously, widgets are manually placed by the user, and apps shouldn't spam the home screen.
Yeah, okay, the short answer is you can't. There are certain things on Android that we have sort of you can lead a horse to water, but you're not allowed to make it drink. Same way you can't by default magically alter settings, but you can intent to the settings app and tell the user what you'd like them to do in order for your app to work. In this particular case, the workflow that you want is for the what you can do is have the user go to the widget screen, drag the widget onto the desktop, or desktop is the wrong word, but onto the home screen, and then have it take them to a sort of configure screen where you can do things like for a weather widget, pick zip code or whatever, but that happens post installation. You can't go from your application to a configured widget on the home screen.
Yeah, I think that pretty much covers it.
That's about it, yeah.
All right, so let's move on to the next question.
Next question. I have a view pager with 3 tabs. The third tab uses GPS. If I'm on the second tab, it will have already loaded the third tab and thus started looking for GPS coordinates, which is bad for the battery. Is there a workaround to this?
Yes, and the answer is you're doing it wrong. No, so really the problem here, it sounds like, is you're trying to go and load your GPS service as soon as as soon as your view is rendered. And what you really want to be doing is have a callback, and as soon as your your view page is actually on screen, as soon as your layout is on screen. Then actually go and start GPS, and as soon as it moves off the screen, turn it back off. And ViewPager has a callback to go and see what the current tab is. So what you need to do is hook into that callback, monitor which tab is on screen, and as soon as you see your third tab come up, turn on GPS. As soon as you see it switch to another tab, turn it back off. So short version, don't go and load GPS the moment your view is loaded. You actually have to be a little bit smart about it and actually hook in with ViewPager.
Great. Okay, next question. We just deployed a new version of our application, and the Google Play Store reports an error each time we try to download the app. This happens across multiple devices and carriers. Any suggestions on how to fix this?
Without knowing the error message,
yeah.
It's pretty mysterious. I will say that I encountered something similar to this in the past, and what happened was I already had the link to what I knew the link would be on the Play Store. And so I would go there and I'd see a little error message about not compatible with your device, and it wouldn't let me download. And that's because it wasn't meant to be compatible with that device. Like if I searched for it using the normal Google Play app interface, it wasn't going to show up for my device. So if that's what you're seeing, some sort of incompatible with your device error message, I would use AAPT dump badging and look and see if you have anything that makes it. Or you say multiple devices, but if they're all the same issue, like if you've set min SDK to 15 and you're testing on all gingerbread devices, or something like
added
this.
a feature that doesn't exist on the device.
Right. The core idea being you might have filtered yourself out of market, and AAPT dump badging is the thing that's going to tell you if you're requesting things that are not going to exist on the devices that you're using to test. If it's not that particular issue, then I have no idea without seeing the actual error message.
Right. So a couple things to add on there. One, I know this is probably obvious, but I should mention it just in case, or make sure it's plugged in type of thing. Make sure you don't have the test keys or debug key version of your app loaded on by mistake. Market, of course, has the release keys version of your app. If it tries to install the release keys version over your debug key version, the phone's security system is going to go and stop Market, and there's no way around that. So, like I said, it's an obvious thing, but it's easy to overlook. So, try installing the app first. Completely uninstall the app, then try and install a new version on top, see if that makes a difference. And the only other thing I'd say, if you're still seeing this error message, run ADB bug report and get a dump of the system log and see if there's anything interesting in there, or ADB logcat will work as well too. And that should give you a little bit more information as to why the installation is failing.
Okay, great, thank you. The next question is, I'm sorry, I want to point out here, Sol wrote back that said to Emil that said, thanks Emil, the fill after solved the problem that I used also the set layout params, and the combo of the two caused the blink. So we seem to have fixed that problem. Great. Emil or what?
Emil for the win.
For the
Way to
win,
go, Emil.
okay.
Good job.
What do I know?
Awesome. Thanks.
So next question. Could you create a sample of using a custom checkable view, for example, an extension of a layout, in a multi-choice list? I tried extending linear layout and changing the background color, but the color got applied to random other rows too.
Right. So the reason you're probably seeing the random coloration there, if you apply background color or some other attribute to a view inside of a list view, what happens is as you scroll through the list, those views will actually get recycled, and some of those attributes will won't get updated. And I believe background color is one of the ones that we don't normally go and change automatically. So there's no reason after you set it, just whichever one is going to pick to recycle is going to go and reuse that background color. And so that's the reason you're seeing the behavior that you're seeing. Now, as far as ways to fix this, I think there's two. Alex, I'll let you cover the first one, and I can go into the second approach.
So the So one approach is there's an attribute called, I want to say, activated background indicator. And we actually have sample code that shows you how to use this in the, if you look in our samples folder at Honeycomb Gallery and look at the layout XML for the list view, it uses this. And the attribute, it's a little bit hard to wrap your head around because it's not a set value, it's almost sort of a pointer to a value for a background color, and that what value that pointer points to changes depending on if that list item is selected or not. So that'll give you exactly what you want with about a line of XML.
Right. And in general, so this is the more general approach, is whenever you want to go and to apply some attribute to an element in the list view, what you want to do is not go and apply it directly to the view, but to create some sort of backing data store. So whatever you're using as your data model for your object, go and update it to add an additional field there, set that field, and then use a custom adapter to go and update your view every time that list item is drawn. So 2 parts, add a field to your data model, and then create a custom adapter which handles displaying the contents of that field, so converting from the data to the view.
Yeah, I would also add on to that real quick. The sort of the general thing here with the recycling of list views means that in your custom adapter, when you're setting the value, don't just say if selected blue and assume that it's not going to be blue otherwise, that the default value is going to persevere otherwise, because it might be a recycled view or it was already blue from before. You have to say if not selected gray, if selected blue. And you just sort of have to have both ways involved in every if when you're creating your view.
Good. Excellent answer. Thank you very much. Next question. Is it true that the JavaScript interface doesn't work on Android 2.3.5? I tested it on my Sensation 2.3.4, and there it was okay. On the Emulator and HTC Wildfire 2.3.5, I don't get an error, but the interface won't work.
Okay, so this isn't something I think any of us have actually seen personally, but looking through the comments on this, there is a bug linked on the Android issue tracker, which describes exactly the problem that you're seeing, with quite a few people who have actually acknowledged it as well. So I suspect the answer here is yes, you found a bug. It is a bug, but it is something that you'll have to deal with. There's if you again take a look at the issue linked to in the comments here, but there are a number of workarounds that people have posted. I believe they actually are using JNI to go and directly bypass the parts that's broken here. But in any case, take a look at the code there. There's things you can just go and copy and paste into your own code and solve the problem that way.
Yep. Thank you, Trevor. The next question we have is the only way to prevent a user, that is a child, from exiting an app is the only way to turn the app into a custom home screen?
Yes. So the home button on Android is sacred. There is no way to disable the home button, which means if you want to make sure that somebody can't hit the home button to get out of your app, the only solution is to go and make your app the home screen. So yeah, that's the only way to do it.
Or to root your phone, create a custom build of Android from scratch, and have it magically not include the home screen.
Right. Well, at that point, you basically made it into a custom home screen anyway.
Yeah, that's true.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
I suppose you could make a custom version of Android that doesn't even recognize the existence of a home button.
Yeah. If you want to be really evil / mad scientist-y about it.
But yeah, just make your app the home screen, and that's the usual way to go and deal with this.
Okay.
Though I believe if you do there is a workaround here, though, that you should be aware of, and that's if you start your phone up in safe mode. I think it'll still boot back into the launcher.
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah, so
hopefully your child doesn't know how to boot into safe mode.
Yes. Hopefully you're not dealing with such a child.
If you do, consider getting your kid an engineering degree.
That's right.
Yeah,
Maybe get them their own.
I got to admit that back in middle school, I got really good at getting around all the security systems they'd put on our lab computers. And at one point,
And look where he is now.
Yeah, at one point, I think I just, they were Macs. I started up the machine, hold down Option to disable all the extensions, and they accused me of hacking the computers by holding down a key during startup. Yay.
Yeah.
Which he was doing, but I mean, it's all relevant.
Technically,
maybe.
Yeah. I learned this in high school, too. Being accused of hacking doesn't have to do with how difficult it was. It's just what you accomplished.
Right.
Yeah.
One keystroke can still get you detention.
So anyway, right.
Moving on.
Moving on. Yes, thank you. The SQLite 3 command for the shell is missing in the ICS builds for the Nexus S and Galaxy Nexus. How do you recommend to debug databases in a similar manner without this tool?
I thought they were present if you logged in as root from ADB. I can't say for certain though.
Now, all right. Actually, I'm curious. Are you testing on an actual hardware device or the emulator? Because if you're on a hardware device, usually you don't have read access to the folders where those databases live anyway. So it's entirely possible our engineers have removed it from the user builds under the assumption that you can't access those databases normally. Now, if you don't have that tool on the emulator, then I'd be a little more worried.
Right.
I know it works on my phone, but I have an engineering phone, so you might see something different than what I see. If that's the case, definitely let us know and we can follow up.
Okay, great. Let's see, what else do we have? We have the next question is, I have an app that I'd like to run on both ICS and Honeycomb. For both of them, I wish to keep the same theme, which is theme.hello.light.dark action bar, which is SDK greater than or equal to 14. And then there's a link to Stack Overflow.
So I guess the core of this question is duplicating the dark action bar theme onto Honeycomb. And I actually saw this Stack Overflow question and was about to answer and then double-checked and realized my answer was completely wrong, which was dig into the Android source, find the definition of dark action bar in XML, and just copy it into your app. That doesn't work because it depends on certain UI features that were added for ICS. I believe the Stack Overflow thread someone suggested looking at, what was it, Action Bar Sherlock?
Sherlock Action Bar.
Sherlock,
yeah, I'm looking at it now.
And seeing how they do it. I think that would probably be a good place to get started.
Yeah,
but you're going to have to define it yourself. Creating
generating their own custom action bar in software.
That's probably what's happening is one way or another you're going to have to write your own theme for action bar and then just like an almost dark action bar or something like that. And if you want it to be consistent, then just use it regardless of the platform version.
All right.
Okay. Next one, working on the camera app. I have problems to get the optimal picture size for various devices. Camera.parameter.get supported picture sizes gets the list of supported sizes, but there are devices which make broken pictures with sizes they claim to support.
All right. To my knowledge, there's no other way to do it except this call, right? So.
No, as far as I know, yeah, and I think you're right. There's only that call to do that.
Yeah. So I guess if you're seeing behavior that's incorrect, let us know the name of the device, and we can go and follow up with the device manufacturer. Yeah, this sounds like something that's probably specified in our compatibility document. So if they're doing something wrong, we want to go and follow up with them and make sure they're doing the right thing. So let us know the specific device and the specific firmware version, and then we can go and get some more information for you. But we do need some more information to figure out what's going on here.
Yeah.
Right, yeah. So the background on that is that the manufacturer is supposed to report the sizes that the camera supports, and in that case, it sounds like it's not actually reporting correct number sizes. I've run into this a couple times writing some sample apps for camera, and it actually doesn't surprise me that you might run into an issue where it's not reporting the size that it actually supports.
Is this a widespread problem, or are there just a couple devices that do this, or is it
it depends on what sizes you're trying to chase down. Like standard sizes, like a 5 megapixel camera size, I would be surprised if it doesn't actually report the correct thing. But maybe if you're trying to do a very small image size, you might run into this because maybe they don't have a fully supported version that's there's a version, for example, I think that's supported for MMS messages, right? The very small image sizes, and I remember at least one case where I tried to get a version of that size and the device wouldn't give it to me. But on another device it would. So yeah, please send us some more information about which device you're using and where you're running that on, and we can try to follow up with the manufacturers and see what's going on.
I would say we should also look into adding that to CBD.
Yes, I suspect it's in CDD. It might not be in CTS.
Right, it might not be
Right.
full, as tested as well as it could be, because that shouldn't happen. Yeah, we'll look into it.
Okay. Emil posted another question here. He asked a question about a month ago about how if I could handle boot completed broadcast with HTC's fast boot feature, which is deep hibernation instead of turning the phone on off. You said you would contact HTC about it. That would be great. He'd like to get a status update if one is possible.
Yeah, I recall this super deep sleep of HTC, which I don't know if we directly support.
Yeah, I do remember this question. It's not something that Android supports, but it is something that we said we'd follow up with HTC. Unfortunately, we don't have a status update yet for you, but we're still working on it. So sorry for the delay there, but still on our radar.
Great. Thank you, gentlemen. Next question. Why is the Android 4.0 People app not in the Google Play Store? I have the Samsung Galaxy S2 with Android 4.0, but the TouchWiz People app sucks. Word. Okay.
It's an interesting question. Not going to say one thing or another about TouchWiz. I actually haven't used it myself. But I don't know why the People app is not available in market. That's an excellent question, and one we're probably going to go and after this show and ask around a bit for you. But in the meantime, all of that code is available as part of the Android open source project. So if you go to source.android.com, you can download the source and build your own copy of it. It probably should be in market. I don't know why it isn't. Maybe there's some reason for that, but in any case, there's nothing stopping you from rolling your own, and honestly, you can even go and publish your own copy of it in market. Maybe not the best thing if there's a whole bunch of duplicate copies of the People app floating around, but at the very least, you could build your own copy. It's all Apache license, so there's nothing stopping you.
I suspect at least part of it is that conceptually we just don't think of a dialer or a contact list as an app. We just think of it as part of the phone because it's a phone.
Right.
You know?
Right.
We might have just never
I should point out that part of that app is bound to be the contacts provider.
Right. Yeah. You won't want to install a duplicate copy of the contacts provider. You'll have to strip that out of it.
Right.
I seem to remember part of that actually is contained in a separate APK. At least it used to be, but I haven't looked at it since Honeycomb. So you might have changed it.
There are some parts that it's not one solid app, but the provider, I think, is part of the People app, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, so
it's worth checking. That's just a warning to check that before you just go off and build the whole thing, because you can't replace the contacts provider.
Right. There's actually three parts there. There's the contacts provider, there's the contacts app, and then you also have all of your the sync adapters which feed into the contacts.
Right.
So really, you just want the front end, right? You want something that plugs into the system's contact provider and gives you a different UI.
Exactly. Okay. Where are we? Why do the 2.x emulators come with a Chinese or Japanese keyboard selected by default?
I didn't know.
Perhaps because you live in China? No, I don't know why.
I haven't actually encountered that.
Yeah, I've never I've always gotten the English version when I run it. So.
Yeah, I'm not sure what's going on there. It's possible that you maybe when setting up your emulator you have checked one of the options to say which language you want, but I don't recall there's an option to do that you would do that without really knowing about it. So
I'm not sure off the top of my head. I also think it's interesting that it's the 2.x one specifically.
Right.
He doesn't just say emulators.
There's a comment there saying that somebody else got
the Japanese keyboard.
Keyboard too.
It doesn't. I have seen something before where if you go into settings on the emulator, you'll see that the keyboard is set to something other than English. I don't know why. There's definitely some others that have seen that as well. It's a good question. and we could look into it.
Yeah,
So,
I'll file a bug with Zav and the rest of the SDK team and have them take a look at it. It's entirely possible that this is a known issue. Like I said, I haven't run into it myself, but admittedly, I actually haven't touched the Gingerbread emulator in quite a while too. I've been mostly working on Ice Cream Sandwich, so it's possible there's something going on there, and we'll take a look into it and figure out what's going on there for you.
Okay.
Probably the last guy who tested it was testing Japanese and just forgot to unset it. Anyway, we'll check it out.
Right. Next question, when is the Android team going to come up with a real solution to the fragmented marketplace? Phone-specific startup, photo force close errors, numerous unsupported devices, etc.
It's a pretty confrontationally phrased question.
Right.
Well, I don't know. I'll take a stab at it. I think part of the what we're trying to do with Android is reach the broadest market, right? Having more devices, having lots of people be able to contribute to the marketplace gives people a lot more choices. It also creates some challenges, and I think you've pointed out a couple of them there. But I think the long-term goal of the platform is to be able to reach as many people as we can, and give people as much choice as we can in terms of what they can run on their devices and their phones. So it's not without its challenges, right? And you've pointed out a couple of them there.
It's not a bug, it's a feature.
Right. I would say exactly.
Yeah, but that being said, it should work smoothly, right? Anytime you're seeing technical problems, that's not what we want.
Right.
I would say, first of all, that phone-specific startup force close errors are a bug. We have compatibility standards, and we have compatibility tests that are available to everyone to check to see that things are compatible for any device that they want to put Android on. We provide Android as a platform for people to use. It's open source so that they can put it on any device that they want to. And we deliberately don't try to control too much what people do with it. We can provide support in situations where we've confirmed that who's ever using it is stuck to the compatibility standards that we have. Unsupported devices are just a choice of a vendor to use Android on their device without following our compatibility standards. And there's not very much that we would... The only thing that we could do is somehow withdraw Android from them, which it's not possible.
Well, there is one thing we can do. If you're not a compatible device, you don't get Android Market.
Right.
So if you publish to Android Market, you have a certain guarantee that the device is a compatible device.
Right.
Now, if you're going to go publishing to other markets that are just available for installation anywhere, you have less of an assurance as to whether or not you're actually running on a compatible device, and that is a risk you take by publishing elsewhere.
Right. Well, the other thing I was going to say is that it's a good point about Android Market. That doesn't mean that people can't install your app on their device, even if it's not compatible. And I think this question really comes from a developer who's frustrated because he gets a lot of people using his app and then running into bugs because they're trying to run on a device that isn't well supported. And we share your frustration. I think that the response should be that you try to support your app as best as possible, but you can't support it on devices that where the Android is just an open source version that the vendor didn't really bother to make sure it was compatible. And that's the best you can do.
Yeah. And again, if they do publish the market, you shouldn't see much of that.
Yeah, and I will also say that if you're a developer and you run into this problem with your users, you shouldn't take it personally. It's a difficulty because users can write in and say, oh, it caused a force close on my device and things like that. The best that you can do is say, it causes force closes on devices that aren't devices that have Android Market on them. And if they do have Android Market on them, that means that there's a bug going on that you need to take up with, first of all, notify us, and then we can try to deal with the vendor.
Right. So there is an email address you can use, compatibility@android.com. So anytime you see behavior where it is a device that claims to be Android compatible, it has Android market, but you're seeing behavior that differs from our published APIs, send us an email. Once again, compatibility@android.com. And then we have a team whose job is nothing but making sure that these things work. They can go and follow up with the appropriate contacts, both on our end and on the manufacturer side.
Okay.
And one other comment, too, I should add, too. We've mentioned both the CDD and the CTS a couple times. So for those of you who haven't watched this before, it's worth mentioning what both of those are. The CDD is our compatibility definition document. That's our PDF file that contains a list of what an Android device should look like, what API calls should do, all that fun stuff. The CTS is an automated test suite which device manufacturers run to go and make sure that their device meets the CDD. I will add that the CTS does not test everything in the CDD. Some things are very difficult to test, and some things we just haven't gotten around to yet. So there are some cases where, just if you are seeing something that needs a little bit more attention, again, let us know, and we can add additional test cases to try and correct that. It is also all open source, too, so if somebody's feeling really adventurous, you can always go and send us patches, too. But
okay.
Yes, moving on.
Thank you, Trevor. Next question. USB host.
Since we've got about 10 minutes left or so, I was just going to encourage anybody who's actually on the Hangout with us to actually, and hasn't asked us a question yet, to try to ask us a question, because we do like to talk to live people when we can, although we are happy to read more moderator questions if we have to.
I'd also have to say that dead people, that's pretty much of a one-way conversation.
It is, in fact, true.
So anyway, next question. USB host and OTG. Many manufacturers, Samsung for instance, seem to disable USB OTG or whitelist only some devices in the kernel. Is there a particular reason for this? Galaxy S2, I guess, for instance, or the P7510 10.1 Galaxy Tab?
That's an excellent question. I don't know what the rationale for it is. That being said, there is a feature. I believe it's USB.host or something like that. So you can actually check in your errors. You can go and whitelist your app so it'll only run on devices that go and support USB host mode, which is the same as USB OTG for all intents and purposes. So if you see a device that claims to support USB host mode and has this odd whitelisting behavior, again, let us know. That shouldn't happen. If it supports USB, it should support USB.
Yeah. I would say also for USB host mode, some manufacturers only support their own host mode cables. Right. So, like, for instance, sometimes the Motorola one is a little bit different than the Samsung one or whatever. So I don't know if you've looked at, but this might be what you're experiencing. It might not be a device-specific thing. It might just be getting the cable that matches your device.
Right. Yeah, I mean, of course, on the bottom of most devices, you have a micro USB cable. Yeah. And for USB, you want just a standard USB-A port. But as far as how the dongle to go and convert between those two works, that is an issue. Now, Robert's mentioning here that USB host mode requires power. So some handsets don't have it.
Specifically, USB host mode provides power.
Right.
Right.
So like that would require like your phone to provide power to the keyboard that was typing into it or something along those lines.
Right. Now, I do seem to remember there are some provisions in the USB spec to actually go and have unpowered USB, but I don't know the details around that.
Right, but host mode, I think...
Well, yes, so there's host mode and there's USB on the go. And so USB on the go is, it's... I think it's a subset of USB host mode. I'm not a USB expert myself, but...
Yeah, there's a lot of details in the spec for USB, and I'm not privy to all of them.
Robert is saying on the go allows any device connected to be host.
Right.
All right.
Okay, yes, so it doesn't have to be...
So that's the difference.
Right.
The only other comment I could make is that for whatever reason, Samsung, as the example here, has disabled it because they don't feel that they can support it for some reason. It doesn't work correctly, or it's just not working with the device that they've got, and that's why they don't support it, which is the flip side of compatibility. a feature, if you want to look at it that way, which is it's too bad that they don't support it, but on the other hand, they're trying to say we can't support something that doesn't work. So we're going to move on to one last question here, which is a very... Well,
we ask, Josh is asking.
Oh, Josh is a question. Is there an easy way to set a max width on arbitrary views or view groups?
Essentially what I'm running into is, oftentimes there's situations where you only want the view to grow so far and then to start adding margin onto the side of it. I expected something like some technique, using possibly layout weights or something with linear layout, but there was no approach that I found that was really satisfactory besides just overriding on measure in a frame layout or something like that.
This is a question where I think having Roman here would help.
Yes, unfortunately our UI guru Roman is not with us today, and he'd probably be the best person to ask this question of.
That is a really good question. I feel like I feel like the answer is just outside my field of awareness. Post to Stack Overflow.
Right.
If we can't figure it out, we will get Roman to answer it.
Yes, we will make Roman answer this question for you.
Right.
And we're sorry we don't have it for you just now.
And also, so that we can actually find the question, please remember to leave a comment in Moderator or on our Google Plus thread.
Let's.
I think we just had a new rule. Roman is no longer allowed to take vacation on Wednesdays.
That's right.
Let's try to do one more question here, which is a very interesting question. The very handy try-catch helps with a lot of unforeseen user cases. However, there is no similar service for the native code. Is there Java's try-catch style exception handling in the pipeline for native code? I will make a tackle on this. Try-catch is a language feature. It has nothing to do with Android. It's a way of handling exceptions. And there's nothing that Google could do in order to add that to native support other than modifying native code, the native language. I guess that's C++?
Yes, C or C++.
C or C++. So, that's... I can't say that it would never happen, but I don't see it happening myself. Yes, it's a great feature to have, but it's something that's a feature of the language. It's not something that's a feature of Android.
Right, and as C++ does have some exception handling, but most people I've known disable it because it has some issues. So exception handling is not commonly used in the C++ world, and yeah, like was just said, that's the language feature. It's not anything that has anything to do with Android. My advice would be go and talk to the folks who developed the C++ specification. That being said, C++ has a lot of weight behind it, so that might be a little tough.
Yeah. So anyway, that's the short answer. We've got time for like one more. Trying to import a CSV sheet, products and app, but anytime I get an error related to incorrect indication of the country or currency. I tried to export CSV within apps first and then tried to import this document. Still the same errors. How can I avoid it? I'm not sure what the question really means.
I do.
Sounds like a market question.
So in-app products, in-app purchasing, there's a product catalog. The product catalog, normally you specify via the web interface, but if you have a lot, you can specify them via a CSV upload. For whatever reason, this person is having trouble with the format of the CSV file they're trying to upload. I don't know why without seeing your CSV file. So my advice, post a question to Stack Overflow with the actual, if you can narrow it down to the actual line that's giving you a hard time, that would help. Or at least some decent test case, right? My guess is you probably have something in there that's just being formatted incorrectly and is causing it not to work. We do specify the format on the website, on the developer website, and I know if you use that, it works. So again, I don't know what's causing your problem. Please post some additional information on Stack Overflow, and we can help you.
One more, according to our producer. What is the size of Gingerbread 2.3.3 when you download the platform using Repo? Can you pause and resume the download? And then he lists the command that he used, repo init -u, and then a repo sync.
So I don't know the exact size off the top of my head, but it's on the order of a few hundred megabytes. Probably on the larger end of that. Right?
I was going to say closer to a gig.
Yeah.
I imagine, but
Yeah, it's my sense is that you're running into some problem either with a bandwidth problem or something like that.
Well, actually, this is the repo command too. So not the normal SDK manager, which is what I was thinking.
Right.
So it actually might even be a bit larger than. I want to say it's actually on.
Might be venturing into a couple gigs.
No, I think it's actually on the order. On the actual raw source, I think is on the order of like getting closer to 20 gigs.
20 gigs?
It's huge.
Interesting. Okay.
So can you pause it? Yes, because it's Git. So if you just cancel and resume, it'll pick up where you left off. So
okay.
yeah,
That's
just hit Control-C. It'll cancel. Run repo sync again. It'll pick up where you left off. It does take a long time to download. Unfortunately, there's not much we can do about that.
Right.
It literally is a lot of code.
Yep.
And on top of that, you have to download the complete history because of the way Git works.
It takes a lot of time for it. I would have to say, I feel your pain. It takes a lot of time for us to do it as well. So
yeah.
Does the repo take the J command line argument?
I don't remember.
I want to say it does.
That's the one that prunes it, right?
No, J is the one when you run make/J5, it'll run 5 threads. So if you have 4 or 5 processors that can multi-thread.
Oh yeah.
I think if you let's say have a dual core system and you run repo sync -J2, then it'll go a little bit faster because it'll have 2 separate threads.
Yeah, I think the limiting factor is probably the network there.
Possibly.
Yeah.
Anyway, I think that's about all we have time for today. I'd like to thank our DevRel people and our producer for helping us out today, and we'll see you next week.